A respected pastor, a secret affair, and a mother willing to commit the unthinkable crime to protect her son's reputation. But when a 38-week-old unborn baby stood in the way of a family's carefully curated image, it ended in a brutal murder that shocked the nation. Now, I want you to stop for a second. Imagine you're in a small, quiet town where everybody knows each other. The kind of place where people smile at you at the grocery store, where Sunday mornings are spent in church, and where the local pastor is almost as revered as God himself. A place where secrets don't stay hidden for long, except for the ones that people are willing to kill to keep buried. This is a story about power. About control. About a mother who loved her son so much, that she destroyed an innocent life to protect him. And at the center of it all, a woman who just wanted to have her baby. A woman who thought she was carrying a piece of love, only to find herself carrying a death sentence. Kimberly Dawson was 26 years old. She had dreams, a life, and a baby just days away from being born. But she also had something else, a secret. One that could bring down an entire church. One that could ruin a powerful man's name forever. So when she refused to stay quiet, when she refused to get rid of her unborn child, someone made sure that she never got the chance to speak again. Her killer. Not a stranger. Not a serial murderer lurking in the shadows. But someone she knew. Someone she trusted. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a horrifying reminder of what happens when power, control, and secrecy collide. Because when reputation means more than human life, when secrets become worth more than blood, innocent people die. And this? This was one of the most cold-blooded, calculated murders you will ever hear about. Stay with me as we uncover the disturbing and heartbreaking details of this tragic case. I promise you, you won't believe what happened next. Before we dive in, if you love gripping true crime stories that expose hidden truths, make sure to subscribe to Shocking True Crime Exposed and hit that notification bell. Because stories like this, they deserve to be told. Let's begin. To understand the depths of this tragedy, we need to go back to where it all started. Let's talk about Kimberly Dawson. Kimberly was 26 years old. A young woman with a bright future ahead of her. She wasn't a troublemaker, wasn't reckless, she was the kind of woman who did everything by the book. Grew up in a religious home, worked hard, and believed in love. But most importantly, she believed in faith. Faith in God. Faith in people. Faith in a man she should have never trusted. Kimberly met Pastor Daniel Thompson at the very place she felt safest, church. A place that was supposed to be a sanctuary. A place where people went to heal, not to be destroyed. She was drawn to him, the way many others were. He wasn't just a preacher, he was a presence. He could make you feel like you were the most important person in the room. His words had power. Authority. The kind of voice that could make you believe anything. And for a while, Kimberly did believe. She believed him when he said she was special. She believed him when he said he cared for her. She even believed him when he whispered that what they had was real. There was just one problem. Pastor Daniel Thompson wasn't just a pastor. He was a husband. A father of two. A man with a reputation to uphold, a legacy to protect, and a mother who would do anything to make sure nothing threatened their carefully built image. His affair with Kimberly wasn't just a secret, it was a ticking time bomb. And when she found out she was pregnant, the countdown began. Daniel had built his life on perception. To the outside world, he was the perfect man of God. He had charisma. Charm. A way of making people believe in him, even when they shouldn't. His sermons were electric, his congregation adored him, and his mother. She worshipped him like he was the second coming. But behind closed doors, he was not the man he pretended to be. Because when Kimberly told him she was pregnant, his first instinct wasn't joy. It wasn't even fear. It was anger. She had ruined everything. His image. His marriage. His standing in the church. And the worst part? She refused to fix it. He begged her. Pleaded. Demanded. You have to get rid of it, Kim. This isn't just about us. You don't understand what this could do to me. But Kimberly did understand. She understood that this man, the man who had once held her and whispered sweet promises, wasn't willing to take responsibility. And so, she made her choice. I'm keeping my baby, Daniel. I don't care what you have to lose. It was a simple statement, but it sent shockwaves through his world. Because Kimberly. She wasn't just some woman. She was a threat. A woman who could expose him. A woman who could destroy him. A woman who was carrying undeniable proof of his betrayal. And if there was one thing Daniel Thompson had learned from his mother, it was this: never let anyone take what's yours. Which brings us to Eleanor Thompson. The woman behind the man. Because if Daniel was the illusion, Eleanor was the enforcer. She was the kind of mother who didn't just love her son, she lived for him. She saw him as her greatest achievement, her pride and joy, a man destined for something greater than the rest of them. And she would be damned if she let anyone, any woman, ruin that. Eleanor had built this empire alongside Daniel. She had watched him climb the ranks in the church, molding him into the man that people worshipped. And she knew the truth. She knew her son wasn't perfect. She knew he had weaknesses. But she also knew that it was her job to clean up his messes. So when Daniel came to her, panicked, confessing his affair and Kimberly's pregnancy, Eleanor didn't hesitate. What do we do, Mama? She won't listen. She's keeping it. There was only one answer. Then we make sure she doesn't. Because Eleanor Thompson had spent decades building up her son's name. And she wasn't about to let a nobody take it all away. She didn't see Kimberly as a person. She saw her as a problem. And problems? They get solved. Kimberly had no idea how much danger she was in. She thought she was fighting for her child. For her right to be a mother. She didn't realize she was fighting against an entire system designed to erase her. As her belly grew, so did the pressure. The messages started coming. The warnings. You don't know who you're messing with. Think about your future, Kimberly. Think about what's best for you. This isn't a game. Walk away before it's too late. But Kimberly? She was strong-willed. She wasn't afraid of them. Because in her mind, what kind of man, what kind of pastor, would harm the mother of his child? What kind of mother would? She had no idea. She had no idea that Eleanor Thompson had already made her decision. And once Eleanor made a decision, there was no going back. In just a few days, Kimberly Dawson would be dead. And the world would learn just how far a mother would go to protect her son's name. Kimberly Dawson had always believed in truth. She wasn't the kind of woman who played games, who twisted the facts to fit a narrative. She believed in honesty, in doing what was right, even when it was hard. So when she saw the 2 pink lines appear on the pregnancy test, her first thought wasn't fear. It was hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the moment where everything changed. That Daniel, this man who had whispered so many promises in the dark, would finally do the right thing. So, she told him. She sat across from him, hands trembling, heart pounding, waiting for him to say something, anything. And for a long time, he didn't. The color drained from his face. His jaw tightened. His fingers tapped the table, over and over again, like a man trying to calculate his next move. Daniel, we're having a baby. Silence. Then, finally, his voice, sharp and clipped, no. No, Kim, this can't happen. Daniel Thompson had spent his entire life building a reputation. He was a leader. A husband. A father. The community looked up to him, hung on to his every word, trusted him with their sins, their struggles, their faith. And now, that perfect image was crumbling right in front of him. Kimberly, listen to me. We need to be smart about this. His voice was softer now, the same voice he used on Sundays to convince sinners to come to the altar. You don't understand what's at stake. But Kimberly wasn't fooled. She saw the fear in his eyes, the desperation crawling under his skin. This wasn't about her. It wasn't about their baby. It was about him. I understand just fine, she shot back. I understand that you want me to just make this go away. Daniel leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Kimberly, please. Just, get rid of it. Her stomach twisted. There it was. The truth. She wasn't carrying his child. She was carrying a scandal. And in that moment, she made her choice. I'm not doing that, Daniel. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Panic flickered in his eyes now, a man watching his whole world burn around him. Kimberly, you don't get it. If people find out about this, about you, everything I've worked for is over. She folded her arms across her chest, her voice steady. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you climbed into my bed. Daniel flinched. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, he didn't have the right words. And that's when Kimberly knew, he was never going to choose her. Daniel left that night, but Kimberly? She stayed exactly where she was. She didn't hide. She didn't run. She didn't back down. And slowly, the whispers began. It started in hushed tones, in side glances at the grocery store, in murmured conversations at church. Did you hear? Someone's pregnant. And not just anyone. The pastor's mistress. No, not Pastor Thompson. He's a man of God. Then why is she walking around with his baby? And just like that, the secret was out. Daniel tried to contain it. He denied everything. Told people Kimberly was delusional. That she was just looking for attention. But the problem? Kimberly wasn't hiding. She wasn't ashamed. She was showing. At 7 months pregnant, there was no denying it. And the more she spoke out, the more people started to believe her. And that's when Eleanor Thompson found out. Now, up until this point, Eleanor had been blissfully unaware. She had no idea her perfect son had been sleeping with another woman. No idea that there was an illegitimate baby on the way. But when she found out, it wasn't shock that hit her first. It was rage. Because Eleanor Thompson had spent her entire life making sure her son had everything. Power. Status. Respect. And now, some girl, some nobody, was trying to take it all away. She could already see it happening, the church turning on Daniel, his reputation crumbling, his legacy destroyed over a moment of weakness. And Eleanor Thompson wasn't going to let that happen. You should have told me sooner, she hissed at Daniel, her voice tight with fury. I didn't think it would get this far, Mama. Well, it has. Her jaw clenched. She was already calculating. Already planning. Because this wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just an inconvenience. This was a threat. And threats? They had to be eliminated. Eleanor wasted no time. She went to Kimberly herself. A meeting arranged behind closed doors, away from prying eyes. And at first, she played nice. You're a smart girl, Kimberly. You know what kind of trouble this could cause. Kimberly sat across from her, silent, her hand resting protectively over her belly. Think about your future. Think about the kind of life you want for this child. Kimberly didn't say a word. Eleanor leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. You don't have to do this. Take the money. Start fresh. Let's pretend this never happened. Kimberly met her gaze, unwavering. No. Silence. Eleanor sat back, staring at her. And for the first time, Kimberly saw it. The real Eleanor. Not the pastor's mother. Not the devoted woman of faith. But the woman who had built a kingdom, and would burn anyone who tried to tear it down. You're making a mistake, Eleanor warned. Kimberly didn't flinch. No, Eleanor. You are. And with that, she sealed her fate. Kimberly thought she had won. She thought that standing her ground meant she was safe. She had no idea that Eleanor Thompson had already made her decision. And once Eleanor made a decision, there was no going back. Because in just a few days, Kimberly Dawson would take her last breath. And the world would finally see what a mother is truly capable of, when her son's reputation is on the line. By now, Kimberly Dawson was 38 weeks pregnant. Her belly had grown round and full, her baby kicking, healthy, almost ready to enter the world. A world that was already trying to erase him before he even took his first breath. But Kimberly? She refused to be erased. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't afraid of the whispers anymore. Wasn't afraid of Daniel's desperation. Wasn't afraid of Eleanor's threats. Because she had made up her mind. She was going to tell the truth. And this time, she wasn't backing down. It started with a conversation. A quiet, late-night call to one of her closest friends. A woman who had been by her side through everything. I can't do this anymore. Kimberly's voice was breathless, shaking. I can't keep pretending like everything's fine. It's not. I need to tell people what's really going on. Her friend hesitated. Kim, are you sure? You know what they'll do. A deep breath. I don't care anymore. I have to speak up. This isn't just about me, it's about my baby. She had a plan. The next day, she was going to go public. She was done with the secrecy. Done with the lies. She was ready to tell her story. A press conference. A social media post. Something. Something that would force Daniel to face the truth. Something that would make sure the whole world knew who Eleanor Thompson really was. Kimberly thought this was the moment everything changed. She didn't realize, it already had. Because while she was making her plans, Eleanor was making hers. Eleanor Thompson had spent years protecting her son. She had built his empire brick by brick. She had sacrificed too much to let it all come crashing down now. And now, this girl was about to ruin everything. The night before Kimberly was set to go public, Eleanor made one last move. A phone call. A final warning. You don't want to do this, Kimberly. I already made my decision. A pause. Then, Eleanor's voice, smooth, almost calm. You don't understand what you're up against, child. Do you really think the world is going to believe you? A single mother, no ring on your finger, no proof. Against my son. Against me. Kimberly didn't waver. I don't need people to believe me, Eleanor. The truth is the truth. And I'm done being afraid. Silence. Then, Eleanor's voice, colder now, devoid of the fake kindness she always masked herself with. Then you leave me no choice. Click. The line went dead. Kimberly shivered. Not from fear. From certainty. She knew, Eleanor Thompson wasn't just making an empty threat. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know when. Or how. The threats had been coming for weeks. Anonymous messages. Blocked numbers. Notes slipped under her door. You should have listened. This can still go away if you let it. Some people don't get second chances. She had brushed them off before. But now. Now, it felt different. Now, it felt real. Her instincts told her to be careful. To watch her back. So that night, she locked her doors. Double-checked the windows. Told herself she was safe. But she wasn't. Because safety had never been an option. It was a quiet night. The kind of night where nothing should have happened. The kind of night where someone should have heard something. But no one did. Because who would suspect anything? Who would think that, in a town so devoted to the church, so loyal to Pastor Daniel Thompson, so blinded by Eleanor's carefully constructed image, that a young woman would simply disappear? But that's exactly what happened. Sometime between 9:30 p.m. and midnight, Kimberly Dawson vanished. No signs of a struggle. No sounds of a break-in. No witnesses. One moment, she was home. The next, she was gone. Her cell phone, dead. Her front door, unlocked. Her car, parked in the same place it had been earlier that evening. It was like she had never been there at all. And the most chilling part? Her hospital bag was packed. The baby's first outfit. A bottle. Tiny socks. She had been ready to give birth. She had been preparing for a new life. Instead, she had walked straight into the arms of death. The next morning, her friend, the same one she had called the night before, texted her. No response. She called. Straight to voicemail. Still, she told herself it was nothing. Maybe Kimberly had gone to stay with family. Maybe she was just overwhelmed. But then, as the hours ticked by, something felt off. Her mother hadn't heard from her. Her co-workers hadn't seen her. And when her friend drove past her apartment, her car was still there. Something was wrong. Desperately, she made a call to the police. I think my friend is missing. At first, they didn't take it seriously. Maybe she just left town for a bit. Pregnant women get stressed, you know. But she hadn't taken anything. Hadn't left any kind of note. Hadn't said goodbye. And then came the words that made the blood drain from her friend's face. She was supposed to tell the truth today. The search began. Flyers. Calls. Questions. And then, one person came forward. A neighbor. She had seen something. Late at night. A black SUV parked outside Kimberly's apartment. A figure. A woman, dressed in dark clothing, knocking on Kimberly's door. And the last thing she heard? A voice. Low, controlled. Cold. Come with me. It's time to fix this. The next morning, both Kimberly and that SUV were gone. And that was the moment the entire town realized, Kimberly Dawson was never coming back. Kimberly's story should have ended with a new life. Instead, it ended with a murder so brutal, so chilling, that it would shake the town to its core. And when the truth finally came out, it was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Kimberly Dawson didn't just vanish. She was taken. The last time anyone saw her alive, she was stepping out of her apartment. She was wearing a loose maternity dress, her hospital bag slung over one shoulder. Her expression? Calm. But hesitant. She wasn't running. She wasn't trying to escape. Because she thought she was just going to talk. Going to meet a woman who had claimed to want to make things right. That woman? Eleanor Thompson. The same woman who had once called her a mistake. The same woman who had once told her, you don't understand what you're up against. Kimberly should have known better. She should have turned around. But she didn't. Because she still had hope. Hope that maybe, somehow, things could end without blood. She got into the black SUV. The door slammed shut. And just like that, she was gone. The SUV took Kimberly down a road she had never been before. Out past the streetlights. Out past the quiet neighborhoods. Out into the woods, where the trees grew thick and the air was heavy with the scent of earth and decay. And then, a house. A small, isolated home, far from anyone who could hear. A place Eleanor owned. A place that had been in the family for years. A place where secrets stayed buried. As the SUV rolled to a stop, Kimberly's heart began to race. Something felt wrong. "Why are we here?" she asked, her voice tight. Eleanor turned to her. And smiled. "Because this is where it ends. No one knows exactly how it started. Did Kimberly fight back? Did she plead for her life? Did she scream? But someone did hear something that night. A neighbor, an older man who lived about a half-mile away. He told police later that he woke up to a sound. A sound that didn't belong in the middle of the woods. A woman's voice, high-pitched, panicked. And then, a scream. Then, a thud. And then, silence. For a while, the man lay in bed, frozen. But after a minute, the silence stretched too long. So he got up. Walked to his window. Peered into the darkness. And that's when he saw it. The SUV. Sitting in the driveway of the old Thompson house. He almost called the police. Almost. But in the end, he told himself it was nothing. Because the Thompsons were a respected family. And in small towns, respected families don't do bad things. So he went back to bed. While inside that house, Kimberly Dawson was taking her last breaths. Kimberly did fight. She fought hard. Eleanor hadn't expected it. She thought Kimberly would be easy. A pregnant woman, exhausted, defenseless. But Kimberly wasn't weak. She scratched. She kicked. She tried to run. But there was someone else there. Someone bigger. Someone stronger. Someone who helped hold her down. And then, the rope. Tight around her neck. Her body jerking. Her fingers clawing, trying to loosen the grip. But it was too late. She wasn't breathing. And Eleanor Thompson? She just stood there. Watching. Waiting. Until Kimberly stopped moving. Until the room was silent again. Until there was no one left to tell the truth. But they weren't done yet. Because Kimberly wasn't the only one they had planned to erase. There was still the baby. Kimberly's body was still warm when Eleanor made the next move. A move so monstrous, so horrifying, that when investigators finally uncovered the truth, even the most hardened detectives struggled to comprehend it. They didn't just kill Kimberly. They took the baby. They cut it out of her. A crude, horrifying C-section performed in the dimly lit room of that secluded house. There was blood everywhere. A crime so gruesome that even the medical examiner had to pause when giving his report. The kind of crime that didn't just happen. It was planned. Deliberate. Methodical. And when it was done, the baby was gone. Vanished. Never seen again. And Kimberly? She was buried. Like a secret. Like a mistake. A shallow grave, barely deep enough to cover her swollen body. As if she was nothing. By sunrise, Eleanor Thompson had cleaned up. Wiped away the blood. Buried the evidence. And then, she went back home. Back to her life. Back to the church. Back to smiling at people, shaking hands, acting like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just stolen a daughter, a mother, a life. But Kimberly's absence didn't go unnoticed. By morning, her friend, the one she had called the night before, was already making calls. Her mother was already panicking. And by noon that day, the police were already knocking on doors. And when they found her, buried in that shallow grave, her body bruised, broken, her baby missing, the whole town realized the truth. Kimberly Dawson had never stood a chance. The town wanted answers. The police wanted justice. But Eleanor? She wasn't finished yet. And the secrets? They were just getting started. By the time Kimberly's disappearance was reported, the first 24 hours had already passed. And in a missing persons case? That's everything. At first, the police did what they always do. They checked hospitals, shelters, known addresses. They called her friends, her co-workers, even her exes. Nothing. Her apartment was untouched. Her wallet was still there. Her car hadn't moved. She hadn't just left. She had been taken. And the last person to see her? A neighbor. A woman who had seen Kimberly that night, getting into a black SUV. A vehicle registered to one person, Eleanor Thompson. When the police arrived at Eleanor's home, she was waiting. Sitting at the kitchen table. Calm. Controlled. Like she had nothing to hide. I haven't seen Kimberly in weeks, she told them. A lie. I was home all night. Another lie. I pray she's safe. She was troubled, you know. A calculated lie. She was painting a picture. One where Kimberly wasn't missing. Where Kimberly was unstable. Where Kimberly had simply run away. And for a moment, just a moment, the officers hesitated. Because this was Eleanor Thompson. A pillar of the community. A woman of God. Surely, she couldn't be involved. But then, the phone records came in. Eleanor wasn't home that night. Her cell phone pinged miles away, near the secluded property where Kimberly's body was eventually found. Then, they checked Kimberly's phone records. And there it was. The last call she had ever made. Eleanor Thompson. The final puzzle piece clicked into place. Kimberly hadn't run away. She had been lured. Straight into a trap. The investigation exploded when detectives obtained footage from a neighbor's security camera. It was grainy, but there was no doubt. At 9:42 p.m., a black SUV pulled up outside Kimberly's apartment. At 9:44 p.m., Kimberly stepped outside. She was smiling. She believed Eleanor's lie. She got into the SUV. And then? She was never seen alive again. No footage of her leaving the vehicle. No footage of her coming back home. She had gone into the night. And the night had swallowed her whole. Police executed a search warrant on Eleanor's secluded property. What they found inside would haunt them forever. A chair, stained with blood. A pair of surgical scissors, coated in dried tissue. A discarded rope, frayed and covered in fibers. And worst of all, a notebook. Eleanor's personal diary. Pages upon pages of delusions, plans, justifications. But one entry stood out. Dated 3 weeks before Kimberly's disappearance. And it read, "No one will ruin my son's destiny." A confession. Written in her own hand. It was 2:15 a.m. when the officers returned to Eleanor's home. She was asleep when they kicked in the door. Dragged her from her bed. Read her her rights. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She didn't even ask why. Because she already knew. She just sat there, hands cuffed, face blank. And the only word she spoke. "Do you really think you can take me down?" Because even in that moment, even in the face of the truth, Eleanor Thompson still believed she was untouchable. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, church members, community leaders, everyone wanted to see how it would end. The evidence was overwhelming. The DNA. The surveillance footage. The diary confession. And yet, Eleanor never wavered. She sat in that courtroom, head held high, expression unreadable. Until the prosecution showed the autopsy photos. Until the jury saw the marks on Kimberly's neck. The incision on her abdomen. The emptiness where her baby should have been. And for the first time, Eleanor Thompson's mask slipped. She blinked. She swallowed. She shifted in her seat. Because for the first time in her life, she had lost control. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. The verdict? Guilty. On all counts. First-degree murder. Feticide. Kidnapping. Conspiracy. Eleanor Thompson was sentenced to life in prison without parole. And Daniel? He was questioned. He was investigated. But in the end, he walked free. Because legally, there was no proof he had been involved. Even though everyone knew. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew he had set it all in motion. But without solid evidence, the law couldn't touch him. And that was the final injustice. Kimberly Dawson should have been a mother. She should have held her baby. She should have had a future. But because of power. Because of reputation. Because of one woman's obsession with control, Kimberly never got to see the life she fought so hard to protect. And her baby was never found. Some say he didn't survive. Some say someone out there knows the truth. But one thing is certain, the sins of the righteous are often the darkest of all. Some stories shock us. Some stories anger us. And some stories, they haunt us. This is one of those stories. Kimberly Dawson wasn't just a victim. She was a fighter. A woman who stood her ground, who refused to be silenced. She should have been celebrating the birth of her child. She should have been holding her baby, hearing that first cry, starting a new chapter. Instead, she spent her final moments in terror. Betrayed. Hunted. Silenced. And all for what? Power. Reputation. A family name. In the end, Eleanor Thompson got what she deserved. But justice wasn't enough. Because Kimberly is gone. Her baby is gone. And the man who set it all in motion. He walked away free. Pastor Daniel Thompson stood at that pulpit the very next Sunday. He preached about faith. He cried on stage. He said he was praying for Kimberly's family. And the people? They believed him. Because when people want to believe in something, they will ignore the truth right in front of them. This case is a chilling reminder of just how dangerous power, control, and obsession can be. A mother's love should be unconditional. But Eleanor's love? It was twisted. Poisoned by her desperate need to control her son's future. And in the end, that love turned deadly. Kimberly wasn't the only victim. That unborn baby. That child never got to take a single breath, because of secrets. Because of fear. Because some people believe their image is worth more than a life. And that is the true horror of this case. Because this wasn't a random act of violence. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was calculated. Cold. Methodical. And it makes you wonder. How many more secrets are buried out there? How many innocent lives have been erased, just to protect the guilty? What do you believe should have happened to Pastor Daniel? Should he have been charged? Should he have paid a price for what happened? Or did the system fail Kimberly all over again? Let me know in the comments. Because cases like this, they deserve to be talked about. They deserve to be remembered. If you found this story shocking, heartbreaking, or infuriating, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what justice should have looked like. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that reveal the dark truths lurking beneath the surface, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because here on Shocking True Crime Exposed, we don't just tell the stories. We expose the truth. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth is always closer than you think. Until next time, stay safe.